Hello everyone. In this week in the assignment that you're asked to do, you're expected to utilize reference sources as a way to get started in your research process. So this video is just to provide you with a little bit of background about what those sources are, how they can help you, and where to go to find these. So reference sources themselves are what the title suggests. They are sources that provide you with some kind of larger reference, a larger context or background to a topic area. So things like encyclopedias are a really good example of a reference source. The reason why these are really important to use in the beginning of your research is because they can provide you with some of the key ideas or areas of debate or subjects that are important to this topic that can help give some more direction to a research area. So I'm going to kind of walk you through some steps using a scenario in this video. In this scenario, I'm going to say that I am a student who is interested in doing something with social movements. I might not yet really know what it is I want to study with social movements, but I've been interested in Black Lives Matter and the Occupy movement. I'm interested in how those have worked and maybe what they've accomplished. So I want to look into this in some way. So one place that would be good for me to start would simply to go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia, like other reference sources that you will use in the research process, are always a beginning. They're never an end, and so they're not the kind of sources you want to cite in your papers. But there are great places to provide you with some foundation for more careful thinking about your topic, as well as maybe even providing you with links to further places to go. So when I go to Wikipedia, I'm just going to type in social movements and see what comes up. Of course, it takes me to this page. The nice thing is it's quite detailed, right? If I scroll down, I see that it's going to cover a whole lot of information about social movements. And as I go further down, I see that, there's some important things that I might not have been thinking about before. Just in the very beginning, when it talks about definitions, I see that there's no single consensus about what counts as a social movement. So it tells me that, scholars are probably going to define this in different ways. And so is Black Lives Matter a social movement? I don't know. Some scholars might say yes, others might say no. We see here that a particular author, Charles Tilly, the sociologist, is mentioned specifically. That also tells me something. It tells me that this particular individual is probably a pretty prominent name in this area of study. I may see his name come up in other places as I do further research. And I see here that Tilly is arguing that there are three major elements to a social movement: campaigns, repertoire of contention, forms of political action, coalitions using public meetings, as well as WNC displays. So participants, their concern with representing themselves as worthy, united, having large numbers, and showing their commitment. So just here I start to develop a sense of how I might narrow my topic, ways that I could think about it in some more specific ways, places. So Black Lives Matter might be what interests me in general, but this gives me some ideas of thinking, well, maybe I'm really interested in how they have been able to display themselves as, a united, committed, and very active or numerous group of people. That gives me a much more sort of specific direction, something that I can gain from a reference source. As I go down further, I would see things like some of the history, but I'd also see, different ways of defining types of social movements. This could give me some ideas about what I might want to study further. I would also see different kinds of theories that get used to discuss social movements. And then, of course, if I scroll down to the bottom, I am going to see a lot of references. Now, while a reference source itself wouldn't be something that I might want to cite, there could very well be resources here, sources here, that would be the kinds of things that I would want to cite in my paper. I also will find links to other kinds of reference sources that could help me build this background information even further. So for instance, I see here the Blackwell Companion to Social Movements. That's going to be a scholarly source that works something like Wikipedia, giving me a fuller, richer sense of what a social movement is within an academic field of study. So Wikipedia is always a great place to start. Google too. We'll talk in this class about several ways that Google can be useful. It can also be really useful in providing background knowledge as well. So this isn't technically reference sources, although some reference sources will be linked through Google. But much of what you get here will likely be popular press sources as well. But if I just start here, I can scroll down and I can find a variety of resources that might be useful. Certainly Wikipedia shows up. But I also might even find some other things that could be interesting. You notice just in looking, there's a news article here from Huffington Post. I start to see that people, even in just these descriptions, are talking about social movements as processes of social change. And maybe I sort of knew that before, but I might not have articulated it in quite that way. And I start to see, oh, that's maybe a central thing that I want to consider in my own research. The ways that social movements help to bring about change. So the last thing I want to talk to you about in this video is how you can use the library to even have a more focused set of reference sources that could help you. You are asked to do this in this assignment, and that is to go to a particular database in the library. This database is named Credo. If you scroll down here, you see that Credo Reference Database is specifically a database that will look for reference titles. So not just Wikipedia, but encyclopedias, atlases, dictionaries, subject-specific works. And the important thing about this database is that it's going to give me sort of materials like Wikipedia that work that way, that provide me with an overview and a background of information about my topic, but that are going to be constructed by and for scholars. So the level of information that I get is probably going to be even more helpful in directing my attention to the kinds of scholarly conversations that exist around this topic. Here, when I put in social movements, you notice that I get 10,000 results. So that's a lot to go through to get something that's useful. So I probably want to refine it a little bit. And given what I kind of found out from, just doing some quick background information, I've started to think, this idea of social change is really what I'm interested in relationship to social movements. So if I add that terminology, it narrows my results down by a little more than half. 4,000 is still a lot, so I might want to limit that further. But even there, if I scroll down, I start to see there's some really good resources that could provide me with some really strong background information. For instance, this one, Civil Society, The Roots and Processes of Political Action, Social Movements and Social Change. It's located in the Handbook of Political Sociology, States, Civil Societies, and Globalization. So this is a kind of reference source that's going to give me very detailed background information about how scholars have thought about social movements and social change. And it also draws my attention to some keywords that I might not have been thinking about before, things like civil society. I don't know what that is. I'd need to look that up, but my guess is I actually do know what it is, but if I'm an initial researcher, I might not know what it was. And I would come to find out that that's sort of a key idea, that people who are interested in political action, in social movements, see civil society as a core area where social movements are provided a space to move toward social and political change. So this short video, well, not that short at this point, short video can give you some idea about how to begin looking at and thinking about reference sources in your own research process, and in particular how to use more academic-minded, focused, scholarly reference sources to help you build a strong foundation for the research area that you're interested in studying.